Now, Dr Colin Provost, the Associate Professor of Public Policy at UCL. Dr Provost, thank you very much for joining us. I gather that the Democrats have actually launched what they say is a do-no-harm strategy by keeping Biden away from the cameras.
Right. Well, that's a very interesting strategy. At this point, I think they're just doing their best to put out the message that they can, but they're fighting upstream against the economic situation, which is that inflation is quite bad. The economy is not doing well. And this is what voters seem to care about the most. Democrats are talking quite a bit about how democracy is on the ballot, how we need to have Democrats in power because of abortion access.
Yeah.
But these messages do not seem to be resonating with voters quite as much as the economic situation and the high inflation that voters are feeling.
So it's going back to those Clinton days. It's the economy stupid. It still applies.
It still applies. It has always applied. But it's also when you combine that with the fact that the party in power does not usually do very well in the first midterm elections or midterm elections in general. It's extremely rare that the party in power does well in this situation, that they pick up seats or add to their majority. So when you take that and you combine it with the economic situation, that means it does not look as good for Democrats as it could.
But is there a particular problem here with Biden and the various missteps and gaffes? I mean, I think his approval rating is at 42%. And it's been very noticeable that the various rallies so far, it's been a certain Barack Obama who's appeared and got the crowds going.
Well, it makes sense that Barack Obama would appear because he's still a hugely popular figure in the Democratic Party. And so many Democratic voters probably wish he was still president. So it's not surprising that he's showing up. He's also quite articulate. He doesn't make some of those flubs that you referred to that Biden might be making. But in terms of Biden and his greater influence in that regard, I think that's probably a question Democrats might start having after Tuesday.
Right.
I don't necessarily. It's not certain, but that's something that will come a little bit later, if at all.
OK. And what about those people who perhaps would like Donald Trump to be still president? I'm looking at the various ratings. Latest suggestions, Trump at 71%, Ron DeSantis at 10%, Mike Pence at 7%.
Right. Well, I wouldn't put Mike Pence in that race necessarily. It sounds as though Donald Trump is going to declare that he's running again, but he's been known to announce big news is right around the corner and then never really follow through with it. So I think that's something he wants to drag on for a while. What would probably the most interesting thing to look out for is that Ron DeSantis does stand a good chance of announcing his own candidacy for 2024. He seems like a candidate that would appeal to most of the Republican Party. Some Trump supporters like him because he's kind of like Trump, but without all the drama and scandal.
Yeah, is that why Donald Trump has given him the title Ron DeSanctimonious, that he does actually believe that he could be a threat?
Yes, almost certainly. I think there's probably two factors there. Number one, Trump supposedly believes that DeSantis has not been sufficiently loyal to him and thankful for his endorsement in 2018, the first time that he ran for governor, and he won in a very close race back then. That's the first thing. But then, Trump also almost certainly rightfully sees that DeSantis is his closest competitor in 2024. Mike Pence is probably not. He's probably seen as more of a traitor by many Republican voters, particularly those who think that the 2020 election was stolen. So DeSantis though is a much more legitimate contender and competitor to Trump, and I think that's what Trump is thinking about when he comes up with these nicknames.
But what do you think the midterms are going to tell us now about what many say is a divided United States, and some even warning about the possibility of civil unrest or civil war of some kind?
Well, the United States has been divided for some time. It's heavily polarized, and that will continue to be the case, right? Particularly, and we'll see that in policy making. If the Republicans take over both houses of Congress, it looks very likely that they're going to take over the House. The Senate has been more of a toss-up, although it's been leaning more and more Republican in recent days. So you're going to see more gridlock at the federal level if the House is taken by Republicans, but especially if the Senate is as well. In terms of civil unrest and this sort of thing, that's much more difficult to predict. But we do know that some Republicans, kind of following Trump's playbook from 2020, have said that they might challenge election results if they lose. They might not accept them. What they do after that is anybody's guess. Whether they legally challenge in the courts or they try to provoke civil unrest out in the streets. Either way, I think it probably is not great news for election workers, those who have to go and work polls in 2020 and on Tuesday. They might be under more severe threats, as we've seen is the case with a lot of civil servants in this situation. So it's difficult to know precisely what's going to happen. But yes, there is reason to think that there could be some bad situations or potentially violence as a result of some election results.